Hello interwebs, welcome to Let's Fix Computers. I've got another steering wheel here, which has come in. This is a Logitech, it's a G920. So it's not as high-end as the last one we looked at, but it's still nice. I like the feel of the leather on this one. I like steering wheel stuff. I kind of want to get into this, but also I just don't play racing games at the moment. So anyway, but I like the concept of it. Anyway, this one also has cable problems. Although, unlike the last one we looked at, this is down to a busted USB cable. It does not have a detachable cable. Instead, it's got one of these breakaway jobbies. So, for those of you who've never seen one of these are very common on consoles, especially the older Xboxes and stuff like that, where you've got the controller plugs into the front of the console, and it has this breakaway connector halfway along. So if someone snags the cable as they walk across the room, it just pulls out instead of ripping the console off of the shelf. So this is a breakaway connector, and it's designed to just pop out very easily. Unfortunately, this one has been popped out one too many times, and it just doesn't make a good connection anymore. So I'm not really sure what the best answer to this actually is. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to replace the entire cable. I've bought a nice 5-meter braided USB cable here, and I'm going to replace this whole cable with this one instead. This won't have a breakaway connector on it, however it's 5 meters long instead of 2 meters long. So my theory is that if it's got a nice long braided cable on it, then the trip risk is going to be significantly lower in the first place, because it will be laying flat along the floor. It could even be routed around obstacles instead of just being strained across from the TV to the sofa. That's my theory. So yeah, let's adjust the cameras. We'll open this thing up and we'll have a look at how we can fit this to this. So let's figure out how to take this thing apart. We've got a bunch of Phillips screws on the bottom there, and looks like some real deep set ones here as well. So I'm going to find a long boy and we'll just pull all of those out. Oh, I think my wearer will reach. So just straight away, this is why I use separate screwdrivers and not a multi-bit set, because as soon as you come up against deep set screws like this, your multi-bit kit ain't gonna reach. So multi-bit kits are very useful to have in your toolkit. However, I'd always recommend having separate screwdrivers as well, just in case. Right, this thing is kind of coming apart, but I'm not quite sure how. Oh, does the wheel itself need to come out? I might have to look this up. I think the wheel itself needs to come off. Oop, oop, all right. That's the front part of the wheel that's come off. I'll just disconnect that. Some micro switches there. Those are the paddle shifters. Right. Okay, so we've now got more screws here. The 4 outer ones are going to be for the paddles. Those 3 inner ones, I think that will remove the wheel itself, and that's what I need to get deeper into this guy. Okay, how about that? Whoop. Good. Alright, and there we go. Okay, right, so where I kind of manhandled this a little bit, part has jumped out here. So we've got like a steering rack. That is obviously the travel of the wheel, so that needs to go along. That sits along the bottom there, and it skates back and forth. Alright, we'll fix that in a moment. I've taken too much out. let's get out the bit that we need and then we can move forward. So the USB cable, it comes into the back at this point here. And so if we look around to the inside, that comes up here. So this is our USB coming in. That unplugs there. So that's our USB. So I was anticipating this being soldered on the inside. Instead it's using a connector. Might be able to... I'll see what I think about that in a moment. So let's... I think I'm actually going to need to remove the bottom bit to get this cable out anyway. So yeah, we're going to have to keep going. I didn't really... I kind of only wanted to just expose this board and that was it. But yeah, oh, we've got to go in further. Okay, that's fine. Keep going, keep going. Okay. Time to disconnect all of these. I should have done this before. Now it's awkward. Heck. Alright, that'll do. I've done enough. So, there we go. There's the motor assembly. 2 screws there, and I think we can release this cable. Because what I think I'm going to try and do is I'm probably going to splice this connector onto my new USB cable, which is a lot of extra work. I was hoping I could just solder the new cable directly onto the board. But because this connector is here, I feel obligated to use it, even though that's actually going to be more work. Dunno. Right, there we go. So that little metal bit has just slipped out, and that will now allow that cable to push through. There we go. Oh, that's going to be tough. The toroid ring doesn't want to go through the hole. I think this was fitted after the cable was threaded through. You know what would be really easy right now is to just cut the cable. And I think I'm going to, knowing that I'm going to replace it all anyway. Yep, I'm doing it. Commit. Alright, that's our old cable removed. Right, so am I going to reuse this? Or am I going to solder directly onto the PCB? Okay, so let's unpin this connector and see if we can reuse this somehow. I'm not holding my breath, but we'll give it a try. I'm going to get, let's see, here's something sharp and pointy. So we need to lift up this little plastic flap here, and then the pin will pull out. Let's use the tweezers. Oh, I'm shaking the camera. There we go, there's one. So we'll do that for all of those, and then we'll have some bare pins, and then we can see if we can do anything with those. There we go. This is called a toroidal ring, and what it does is it with the wires wrapped around it, it's basically forming a very, very small inductor, and it suppresses noise on the wires, stops crosstalk and that kind of thing. I'm not an expert on that, but it's to do with noise reduction, basically. Which is why when you get cables that have got the big old chunks wrapped around them. Do I have an example here? Here's one. Ooh. When you see an adapter with one of these on it, that's going to have a big one of those inside it. And again, it just reduces noise on that particular wire. I assume it works, otherwise they wouldn't do it. Okay, so if I were to very gently pry open these pins, I could solder new wires on there. I can't crimp them in reliably because I don't have a crimping tool, but I could just put a little bit of solder on there and that would do the job. That is incredibly finicky though, and I don't really want to do it. Or I can cheat and I can solder directly onto the circuit board. Let's look at what kind of wires are in my wire. So the cable I bought, so this is just whatever looks good on Amazon. It's a 5-meter A to B cable, so just a printer cable. And I bought a braided one because braided cables, they look very nice and they don't tangle up. So they're just nice cables. So let's just unravel that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to very ruthlessly cut off the end. Huh. Okay, now I need to try and strip this back some. I don't know if I can wire strip braiding. I'm going to try. It's okay if the braiding frays a lot, we can deal with that. Also, it'll be inside, so you won't see it anyway. Okay, that's kind of working. I might use a knife on that. There we go, there's the braid removed. So let's have a look at the existing USB cable that we've just unpinned here. We've got our 4 USB wires here. We've got the red and the black, which is our plus 5 volts and our 0 volts, or ground. And then we've got the green and the white, and that is data plus and data minus. I forget which is which, but doesn't matter right now. And then finally, we've got this other black wire here, and you'll notice this guy's kind of more chunky than the rest. This is the shield of the wire. And so where we've just stripped our new one, that's what this is. It's the shield, which is effectively our earth wire. Now, in most electronic applications like this, and in most computers, shield and whatever the ground or 0 volt will all be connected together. It will all be common. So these are fundamentally the same thing, but they're connected to different places. This is specifically the 0 volt rail for the power line, and this is just connected to the chassis or anything metal in the device. So technically this is optional, but we would want to have it connected because this racing wheel has its own power supply. And because there's a power supply at the wheel and a power supply at the computer, the ground levels of the two devices could be different. You could have a potential difference here. And this is how electrical shocks can happen, when two devices that have floating DC levels are actually slightly off from each other. It's like having two guitars where one of them is slightly out of tune from the other. They're supposed to sound the same, but they're not quite the same, and it sounds discordant. So it's important that we have this shield wire connected, because this will ensure that the ground of the racing wheel is the same as the ground in the console or computer that it's connected to. And it makes sure that you can't get a shock off of it through the wire. So that's why there are two grounds there. So that is our chassis ground. We'll have some of that connected up. Then we've got more of the cable shield. We don't need that, so I can just cut that back. Then we've got our 5 USB lines, which are very faded, but we can make it out. We've got this pink one is supposed to be red. Then we've got a negative, and then we've got our green and our white there. So there's our USBs. And then finally, this metal strand here, this is to stop the cable from stretching. So this will be like some steel wire or something like that, and it makes sure that the cable cannot stretch. Usually this would not be necessary, but because we've got a 5 meter long cable, that's the kind of time when you'd actually care about that. So this doesn't need to be connected. So again, I'm going to chop that back as well. Right, so But yeah, I'm just going to use these cutters to just very gently pry open the crimps. And then I can either just fatigue the wire out, or enough of it will break off that it doesn't matter. So there's the removed pin. So the areas that are relevant here. So that bit is holding onto the cable sheath, and that bit in the middle there holds onto the actual wire strands themselves. So this middle bit is very difficult to reopen, because obviously these things aren't designed to be reused. However, if I put the wire into this area and just put a little bit of solder in there, it's going to hold on well enough not to be of concern. So that is the intention. I've done this before when repinning stuff like this. It's really, really fiddly, but it does work. If we had like a 24-pin connector to do or something like that, I'd be like, absolutely not. However, because we only need to do 5 of these, so I'm kind of thinking I'm going to go for that. Right, lazy mode activated then. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to run my cable through the back of the bottom case. So I'll poke that up through there. And what I shall do is I'm going to pull through a lot of slack and just put this down on the floor now. So I don't need access to this. I just need the cable to have already gone through this hole, because the plug won't fit. One more thing as well I'm going to do before I start soldering this wire in place is I'm just going to tie a knot in it, and that's basically going to be my strain relief. So I'm going to tie this knot back. So I've tied that back about sort of, you know, just under a hand span away from the end, which should be enough. So that basically makes sure that there is a little bit of strain relief, so if the cable is pulled on, it's going to pull on that knot and not on the solder joins. Jeez, why am I fighting this so much? I need some more heat. Oh, okay, these are ground pins, which is why they're fighting me. I'm just amazed that a double-sided board is putting up this much fight. I'm going to switch out to a bigger tip because that's not helping me. So now I've got some nice empty holes that I can thread wires through. Except for that first hole on my... Good grief. I feel like I'm in the twilight zone with how much trouble this is giving me. This should be one of the easiest soldering jobs in the world. Nearly there. Right, that now needs some solder. Right, well, that was embarrassingly difficult to pull off, and I hate it. However, we are now soldered on. Just clean up the back a little bit, get rid of this schmutz that's left behind. There we go, that's passable. That was embarrassingly difficult to do, but it's now on. So now what's going to happen is we're going to put everything back into place. I'll just wrap some Captain tape around that braid, or actually, I'm going to do a very quick experiment. I'm just going to see if I can just melt this braid. Don't know what'll happen. I'm going low airflow, very high temperature with my hot air station. There we go. That's just dealt with the end of the braid there. Okay, let's see if we can start reassembling this now. So I'll just pull the wire through up to my tactical knot. That's going to go in there. And hopefully the knot on that is positioned. I can move it up and down the cable if I need to, so we'll see what needs to be done there. I'll put that little shim of metal back in. Now this bump stop slide needs to be in the right place. Which I think I decided must be like that. Yeah. So I'll put that roughly centered. Now I'm going to put some screws into the bottom of this to hold this all in place. Right. I've definitely put way too much slack on this cable, but that's not a bad thing, I don't think. Just could have been less. So I need to swing that chassis ground wire around. All right, there we go. Not exactly a pro job, but definitely a job. That's what I'm going to call that. Let's get all this hooked back up. So these connectors are all slightly different from each other, so it's pretty easy to get them into the right place. If it doesn't fit, it's in the wrong plug. Right, I think we're there. Everything seems to be hooked up. And so all that's left now is just for the front wheel and the top cowl. So now I've got this bit bolted back on, it's significantly simpler. Well, yeah, this did have to come off in order to get the old cable out. So although it feels like I made a tremendous faff of all of this, I think I did actually go in as deep as I needed to go there. So that's fine. Right, however, I can put the top bit back on. I would do an open test of it. However, I don't think I actually need to, so I think I need to screw those. Let's bring that down like that. There we go. Right, that's all in. Thread that through there. And now the really long screws go into there. Once again, so we're in the upright position and we're going to go 1 full turn plus half, 1 full turn plus half. Good. I think if I was doing this again, I would probably make sure that the wheel was at full lock when taking it apart. I think that would make it easier to make sure it's aligned in the future. However, it works. Okay, so we're about done. There's one last thing now. With my strain relief knot on the other side of this, there's not a lot of movement here, but there is bare metal of that metal shim around here. And I think over time there's a possibility that that might just start eating through the wire. So I might just get the glue gun and just splurge some hot glue around there. And that, even if it doesn't hold the cable in place, will just provide some rubber, again, some more rubber strain relief there to stop this from being able to just shimmy up and down and just slowly scrub through the wire. So I'm going to do that, and then we're done. There we go, and now we've got some strain relief on that. So even if this glue does break off, because it's just hot glue, it's not exactly a good repair. Even if that does break off, it still just puts a bit of rubberizedness around the wire, just so that doesn't scrape on the metal insert on the other side. So I'm fairly happy with that now. Hypothetically, you could probably take the wire around this cable wrap and then out the back for some added protection, like that. That's probably how I would run this thing, just so it's got some additional snag on it. But the end result is we've now got this nice new 5-meter long braided USB cable on it. So that was a bit more hassle than I thought, but that should work fine. So I'm going to go and set this up somewhere now, and we'll just make sure it all works, and I'll do my customary bad driving in Dirt 5 or something like that. Alright, I've got some pedals this time, although, man, racing pedals, they're set up like race cars where you're expected to be sitting back in a bucket seat kind of thing. If you're just sitting in a chair, these things are hideously uncomfortable to use, in my opinion. I'm sure if you get them at home, you can get a comfortable setup. Also, obviously, this desk is too high. I'm making excuses because, spoilers, I haven't gotten any better at Dirt Rally since the last time I tested one of these. Anyway, let's watch it go round, everyone. So I've got this thing set up, and now I've actually got an accelerator. Off we go! I also took the time to actually adjust the saturation point of this one. So now I don't actually have to do like 1.5 turns to get to full lock, which makes like doing multiple turns makes sense if you're doing something like Euro Truck Simulator. But in a racing game like this, where obviously I kind of need full lock without moving my hands, doesn't work. Anyway, in the here at the moment, I'm actually, oh, nope, I'm okay. Let's see if we can get up to this hairpin and not, nope, I've made a hash of it. Gear down. It's obviously not as powerful as the other wheel. Oh, there's the hairpin. No. Well, that's where I was going to park up, if I'm honest. So thank you everyone for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.